You finally got diagnosed at 34, and you felt worse, not better. Nobody warns you about that part. The relief shows up, and right behind it walks the grief. Picture the parking lot outside the assessment office. Engine off, the report's on the passenger seat, and it's got your whole life in it, written in clinical language by someone who met you 90 minutes ago. Every word fits. That's the problem. Every word fits, and you're sitting there doing the math on 30 years you can't get back. You thought a name would feel like a door opening. Some days it feels like a door closing on the kid who needed it. So if you got the answer, and the answer hollowed you out for a while, you're not broken, and you're not ungrateful. You're just standing in the part nobody put on the brochure. This is Pinball Mind, where we say the thing out loud that the support group only hints at. We're the ones who aced the test and lost a permission slip. So we'll talk about late diagnosis the way it actually lands, not the way the pamphlet sells it. 4 things nobody warns you about getting the answer in your 30s or 40s. Not the symptoms, the aftermath. The part that hits after the appointment, when everyone expects you to be relieved and you're somewhere a lot more complicated than that. Here's what's actually happening under the hood. For most of your life, you ran on a wrong theory of yourself. The theory was simple, and you didn't pick it, you absorbed it. The difficulty was you, not your wiring, you. Lazy, scattered, too much, and not enough at the same time. You built every coping strategy on top of that one bad assumption, and the strategies worked just well enough to keep the assumption hidden. Then a clinician hands you a different theory, and your brain has to do something brutal. It has to go back and refile 30 years of evidence. Under a new heading, researchers have started studying exactly this. A 2026 study in the journal Autism looked at hundreds of late-diagnosed neurodivergent adults, a lot of them ADHD, and found the reaction isn't one feeling, it's a cycle. They named it the grief, relief, and belief cycle. Relief that there's finally a name. Grief for the version of you that went without one. And eventually, belief, a new way of seeing yourself that you have to build from the studs. The scale of this isn't small. The big national survey on adult ADHD found that most adults who have it were never treated for it. A whole cohort reached adulthood undiagnosed, white-knuckling jobs and relationships on a brain nobody explained to them. Researchers have a name for that group now. The lost generation. So when the diagnosis lands and you don't feel triumphant, that's not a glitch. That's the cycle starting. Here's the part of it nobody warns you about. Thing 1. The relief shows up holding a bill. The first feeling is real. The name lands, and something in your chest unclenches. Because for the first time, the story isn't, you're a screw-up who can't explain why. The story is, your brain runs a different operating system, and now it has a name. That's the relief, and it's true, so hold on to it. But relief doesn't come alone. Right behind it is an invoice for the life the diagnosis implies you could have had, the job you'd have kept if someone had caught this at 12, the friendships that didn't survive you forgetting to text back for 3 weeks, the version of you that wasn't tired to the bone by Wednesday. You start grieving a life that never existed, which is a strange and specific kind of pain, because you can't point to the thing you lost. You can only feel the shape of where it would have been. The relief is the door. The grief is the draft coming in under it. Both are in the room, and nobody told you they came as a pair. Thing 2, you start grieving a kid you can't go back and help. This one ambushes people. The diagnosis doesn't just reframe your adult life. It reaches all the way back and rewrites your childhood. And standing in the rewrite is a kid you suddenly understand completely and can't do a single thing for. You see the report card now. Bright, but doesn't apply himself. Capable of so much more. You used to read that as a verdict. Now you read it as a misdiagnosis in cursive. That kid wasn't choosing not to apply himself. That kid was drowning in a classroom built for a brain he didn't have, getting graded on the drowning. And the worst part is the kid believed the verdict, carried it for decades, built a whole personality around being the smart one, who somehow keeps failing at the easy stuff. The study had a name for this exact feeling, grieving for your younger self. Not as a metaphor, grief, the clinical kind, for a person who's still technically you, just 25 years too late to protect. Thing 3. The diagnosis is the starting gun, not the finish line. You expected the name to be the end of something. The hard part, solved. Roll credits. What nobody tells you is that the diagnosis is the easy part. It's the starting gun, because here's what happens after. You start setting down the coping strategies that ran you into the ground. The overfunctioning, the masking, the doing everything twice so it looked effortless. And the second you set those down, the symptoms you were straining to hold down for years come up for air. For a while you feel more ADHD, not less, because you finally stopped pouring all your energy into hiding it. People expect a diagnosis to be a switch. It's not a switch. It's a renovation. And renovations look worse in the middle than the room did before anyone started. The researchers were blunt about this. They called for treating diagnosis as a first step, not a destination. The name doesn't fix you. The name just finally tells you what you're working with. Thing 4. The crash can come after the answer, not before. You'd assume the breakdown comes first, and the diagnosis rides into the rescue. Sometimes it runs the other way. Sometimes you hold it together, right up until the moment you're finally allowed to stop holding it together, and then everything you've been carrying gets set down all at once. The study found this too, as its own theme: post-diagnosis burnout, the exhaustion that arrives after the answer. It makes a brutal kind of sense. For 30 years, you were the high-functioning one, running a marathon in dress shoes and smiling about it. The diagnosis is the first time anyone, including you, gives you permission to admit the shoes never fit. And the body, which has been waiting a very long time for that permission, takes it. The crash isn't you falling apart. It's you finally putting down something you were never meant to carry alone for that long. It looks like collapse. It's closer to a body telling the truth for the first time. So what do you actually do with all of that? 4 moves. Not a cure. A way through. Move 1. Write the bill, then close the books. Get a piece of paper and actually write down what you're grieving. The job, the friendships, the years. Name them, specifically, in your own handwriting. Grief you won't name just sits in the body and bills you in interest. Grief you write down has edges. You can look at it, feel it for an afternoon, and then close the notebook. The point isn't to wallow. The point is to stop quietly paying for a loss you've never once said out loud. Move 2. Reread one old memory with the new lens. Pick one specific scene. The parent-teacher conference. The job you lost. The friendship that went cold. Then tell it back to yourself with the diagnosis in it. Watch lazy and difficult turn into undiagnosed and unsupported. You're not making excuses. You're correcting the record. The story you tell about your past is the story you carry into your future. And right now, it's running on a verdict that was wrong. Move 3. Pick one accommodation. Just one. Don't renovate your whole life this week. Pick a single change that meets the brain you actually have. One timer. One body double for the task you can't start. One honest conversation that ends a performance you've been running for years. Just one. The instinct after a diagnosis is to fix everything by Friday, and that instinct is the exact overfunctioning that wore you out in the first place. Start with one thing you'll still be doing in a month, because a small change you keep beats a big one you abandon. Move 4. Schedule the crash before it schedules you. If the burnout's coming, meet it on purpose. Block out recovery time before your body takes it without asking. Tell the person closest to you that the next few months might be heavy, so you're not also performing fine for them on top of everything else. You spent decades hiding the cost of this. The move now is to budget for it out loud, on a calendar, like the real and predictable thing it is. That's not weakness. That's the first time you've planned around the actual brain instead of the imaginary one. 2 quick things. Hit like if you've ever sat in a car holding a piece of paper that explained your entire life. And subscribe, because we make these for the ones who got the answer late and had to grieve before they could grow into it. Here's the thing they really don't warn you about. The grief, the rewrite, the crash. None of it means something went wrong with you. It means something finally went right, decades late, and your whole system is catching up to the truth all at once. You were never the problem. You were the kid they called high potential and never taught how to live inside the wiring. The label was always wrong. The living was always real. Pinball mind. Deep dive videos for the ones who aced the test, lost the permission slip, and spent 30 years performing fine.